So Lynn is bringing up the slides, which will be quite helpful because the first slide is quite technical.
No, I haven't received it.
They're not there?
No. The afternoon file.
So
It's not in the afternoon file. Maybe Barry, are you using your Gmail?
yeah.
Yeah, let's log into your Gmail.
So I'll try and do it without the slides then.
Okay.
So BFO was founded in.
I got it.
You have it? Okay. Was founded in 2005 or thereabouts. It went through one major version change when we added information entities, or anyway, the facility to include information entities. And that was in fact provoked by OBI, because OBI needed to have terms to relate to things like propositions and hypotheses and publications and grants and so forth. And so we changed BFO and created BFO 1.1. Then OWL 2 came along. And so in honor of OWL 2, we created the OWL 2 version of BFO, which was BFO 2.0. But now, in connection with the events of 2020, 2021, we made another change. And whether it's a small change or a big change is going to have to be shown by the results of using it. So the BFO was turned into an ISO standard, or more precisely, it was shown in an ISO standard that BFO satisfied the requirements of being a top-level ontology. Those requirements are set forth in part 1 of the standard. Now you see here it costs 118 Swiss francs, but if you're very clever, you will hit on this blue box here, which will enable you to get it free. And there's another blue box down here, which also will enable you to get it free. Now, so part 1 sets forth the requirements. Part 2 sets forth a demonstration that BFO satisfies the requirements and describes BFO in general terms. But the actual content of BFO is here, where it's also free. This is the ISO standards maintenance portal, which is where ISO puts software and databases and so forth. And you can find everything and instructions to use them at this link down here, or just Google BFO 2020. All right, now, why or what do we have? Can you move it forward? Why do we have a rather big change in BFO 2020? Well, this is, it's not his fault. It's his discovery. So he discovered that everyone using BFO, but everyone using ontology with relations like part of, was potentially committing a logical error. Part of, in OWL, or in ontologies which are restricted in their expressiveness like OWL, will only be transitive under certain conditions. And you can't find a way in OWL of eliminating the problem that part of is sometimes not transitive. When you would assume, because it's true, that if A is part of B and B is part of C, then A is part of C. And similarly, you would assume that if A is to the left of B and B is to the left of C, then A is to the left of C. And there are many other relationships for which this problem arises. Now, Alan created a solution to this problem. And that solution is one alternative representation of OWL in the BFO 2020 ISO version. And I'm going to try and describe it, but let me tell you what's in the BFO 2020 first of all. First of all, we have an two OWL versions of BFO, one with the temporalized relations, one with a minimum set of relations. Which the one with the minimum set of relations is already has been in circulation for a long time. It's nothing new. The temporalized relations are something new. Something else which is included is a first order logic version of BFO. and a common logic version. They're more or less equivalent. And these solve the problem of transitivity and do all sorts of other good things. And I was very pleased with the remark at the end of Robert's tour de force, where he talked about 30 papers which are now using first order logic as a way of getting deductive stringency into ontology, because people who use part of without thinking very carefully about transitivity are running the risk of deviating from logical stringency. All right, now another virtue of first order logic is that we will finally be able to use more of the definitions in ontology. So this definition contains a relation which is at least a 4-place relation. And remember, OWL can't even do 3-place relations. There are some definitions in the infectious disease ontology which include 8-place relations. Now, using,
Sorry.
yes?
That's not a 4-place relation.
Well, I tried to work out exactly how many relations you would need. There isn't just one 4-place relation here, but if you have receptivity activity occurring in a membrane that is part of a pathway that positively regulates activity occurring in something else, that is more than a 4-place something. I think you probably would need at least a 4-place relation to capture part of it, and then anyway. All right. So what is the problem of transitivity? So this is a very bad inference, but it will give you the idea. Everyone would agree that a milk tooth is part in a living organism, is part of the jaw. Everyone would agree that the jaw is part of human, but not every milk tooth is part of a human. That's not, anyway, that's an informal example, which I'm myself not convinced by at the moment. But you see the kind of problem that will arise when entities gain and lose parts at different times. It may be that A is part of B holds at only one time, B is a part of C holds at only another time, and so you don't have transitivity. And OWL can't fix that because OWL can't capture 3-place relations. Now here is a more technical example. Every portion of skin tissue has, at some time at which it exists, some case site as part. This is one assertion. And this is a different assertion. Every portion of skin tissue has at all times at which it exists some specific case site as part. Now, OWL can't distinguish between those two cases. And now, do you know in all your uses of part of in your ontology that you're not using a case like this where there are two alternative readings, only one of which would be correct? Probably you do, because this kind of case is rather rare. But with the goal of logical stringency, we should find a way of solving this problem, and Alan found a way of solving this problem. And that's what the temporalized relations are all about. Now, the temporalized relations don't give you just part of. You can't just say part of. You can for processes, for recurrence, but not for continuous. You either have to say part of at all times or part of at some time. Or you have to have some time restriction which will prevent the transitivity problem. And that's what I'm going to talk about down here, because that is what I think will work. So you have two alternatives. One alternative is you keep on doing what you're doing now, but you use part of for continuance only in those cases where you have checked very carefully, ideally proven, that there is no transitivity problem. In other words, the transitivity always holds. If transitivity always holds, you can keep on using part of in the way that you've always used it. But you have to check. When you're dealing with milk tea, you may go wrong. Some people are dealing with milk tea. The other alternative is that you get with the program, you use BFO with the temporalized relations, which is already worked out. But whenever you use part of, you always use the at all times part of, and you call it part of. All right, did you get that? So either following one or following two comes in the end to exactly the same thing. You use part of as an abbreviation for part of at all times. You never use part of at some time. It's not logically useful. You can never draw interesting inferences from part of at some time. So these are your two alternatives. And in fact, they are only one alternative. Namely, check when you use part of or part of at all times, which is what you want to use, that you don't have transitivity problems. All right, now there's more. So what we're working on now is the idea that you can solve the transitivity problems logically by using other time restrictions. So instead of part of at all times, you might want to say part of at all times at which the organism is alive, or at which the organism is gestating, or at which the organism is not suffering from trichinella, or any other time-dependent predicate about, for instance, an organism where transitivity might be an issue. You eliminate the transitivity issue by using time-dependent part of. And we're already experimenting with this. And I'm not going to go into details, but I think that's more or less what I wanted to say. So anybody who has any questions? Yes?
So basically, you end up with a lot of target nodes. If you do like that, you have to think it, organize them. You know, have different attitudes.
Well, no. So you would only need to do this in a very, very few cases, namely those cases which are rare, where transitivity causes problems. You solve the problems by tightening up the time domain. And these are just some ways of doing it, illustrations. We're experimenting with other ways. So the temporalized relations do not have to be just at all times and at some times. They can be any kind of time restriction on the relation. And as I say, it's relatively rare. It's very hard to come up with examples where you do have the problems. But logically speaking, it's possible. And that we know that there are actual cases where it could arise. Yes.
So, yeah, the temporalized relation, I think it's been almost like 10 years now since they were first proposed.
Yeah.
I just reposted on, I don't know where to do it, actually on Twitter, my original critique.
Yes, so we're dealing with a certain person who, it's not his fault, he has time problems. Actually, let me show one or two more slides, since this will put Chris's mind at rest. So we've started a working group on BFO temporalized relations, which has a whole group of people who are very clever working on the group to try and work out the way forward. The first thing they've been studying is your piece. And so we are really working very hard to bring not just this, but a number of other loose ends in the BFO documentation to a close, because we have important people now outside this room who are using Buffalo BFO in very heavy duty ways. So we need to be running a tighter ship. And another piece of news is that John Beverly, who's standing at the back there, has just been hired in Buffalo to be a faculty member, and he will be helping not just to improve BFO and the documentation of BFO, but also adding all kinds of new kinds of teaching for different audiences.
Right, very good.
All right, so thank you all very much.
Yeah, I want to know. So Barry, I have a gift for you. This is a book. We have translated the book. Your book, Building Ontologies with Basic Form Ontology, from English to Chinese. So this one actually, all the authors, not authors, translators told me I should handle this for you.
Thank you very
Yeah.
much.